An investigation begins into the deaths of two women in Melbourne overnight after an assault resulted in a fatal police shooting. Work begins on a maritime corridor into Gaza as the US denies reports 5 people were killed in an aid airdrop. Hundreds gather in Ballarat to remember Samantha Murphy a day after her alleged killer is charged. And the Pentagon releases a report into UFOs. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Dan Bourchier. A woman has been fatally shot by police in Melbourne's northeast, while a second woman has also died. Police were called to an address in Lower Plenty last night following reports a woman in her 50s was being attacked by a woman in her 20s. Reporter Jesse Thompson has more.
2 women have died as a result of this single incident that unfolded in Melbourne's outer northeast last night. Police say they were called to an address in the suburb of Lower Plenty at about 6:30, following reports that a woman in her 50s was being, as they put it, seriously assaulted by a woman in her 20s. Now, officers say when they arrived at the address, the younger woman confronted them armed with a knife. They fired a police firearm at her, and that was a fatal shot, so she died. Paramedics and police then rendered assistance to the older of the 2 women, but she also died of her injuries at the scene. So 2 women dead there as a result of that single incident. Police say the 2 people were known to each other and they don't believe that anybody else was involved in this at this stage. They have launched a significant investigation with oversight from the police force's Internal Ethics and Conduct Command. We don't have too many further details, Dan, but we're expecting police to speak at about 12:30 today, so we should have further information then.
Jesse Thompson reporting from Melbourne. The President of the European Commission expects the maritime aid corridor to start operating between Cyprus and Gaza this weekend. Ursula von der Leyen has been inspecting facilities at a Cyprus port, which has been identified as a launch point for aid shipments. The corridor would allow aid ships to sail from Cyprus directly to Gaza, although it's estimated it'll take several weeks to get the port up and running to full capacity. The President of Cyprus says alternative aid routes must be explored amid mounting international concern regarding the humanitarian conditions in Gaza.
The Cyprus Maritime Corridor aims at scaling up aid by complementing other routes that include the all-important Rafah crossing point from Egypt and the airdrops from Jordan. It is also clear that we are at the point where we simply have to unlock all possible routes.
And today we are facing a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. And we stand by the innocent civilians in Palestine. And this is why Europe is financing a major humanitarian aid effort for Palestinians in Gaza and in the region.
The announcement comes after reports 5 people were killed by aid airdropped into Gaza when parachutes failed to deploy properly. 10 people were also injured when the pallet fell apart near the coastal refugee camp known as Al-Shati, one of the most devastated regions of Gaza. The US has denied the aid drop was theirs.
Of note, press reports that US airdrops resulted in civilian casualties on the ground are false, as we've confirmed that all of our aid bundles landed safely on the ground.
According to the UN Office for Humanitarian Affairs, 416 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank since the October 7 attacks as Israeli forces search for militants. The UN says children account for a quarter of the Palestinians killed. And a warning, you may find this next report distressing.
They knew him from the beginning, long before he was made into a symbol of angry times. 10-year-old Amr Najjar wrapped in the colours of Hamas. But he was just a schoolboy, killed going shopping with his dad. Because he was killed by Israeli troops, the factions celebrated him as a martyr. The PLO, the Marxist-Leninists, Hamas, all bore him to his grave enveloped by their flags. This is a story about the killing of a child, not a symbol. Amr Najjar was one of 3 children. A good student. On March 4th, he was being driven by his father Mohammed with his younger brother through Bourchier when they encountered an Israeli patrol. They stopped near this shop on the corner.
كنا في البلد بدنا نشرب حاجات البيت كأي عائلة طبعا، وإحنا نازلين في السيارة فتفاجأنا في الجيش واستهدفونا استهداف مباشر.
The army had been in Bourchier since earlier in the afternoon. This image was captured by a local at around 3 p.m. The military said they'd been stoned by youths. A local told us it was quiet when Mohammed Najjar's minibus arrived sometime between 4:30 and 5.
ولا هو بيتحدث مع ناس برا ولا إشي، واقف بس مشان لأنه شاف في جيش قدامه وقف.
Then a shot was fired directly through the windscreen where Amr, his father and brother were sitting.
أطلق النار مباشرة علينا فاستشهد الطفل عمر محمد نجار، استشهد على الفور. يعني لم يحدث له إصابة بالاستشهاد مباشرة. إصابة كانت في الرأس.
All of this was witnessed by Amr's younger brother, sitting beside him here.
طخوه بعدها وقع، أنا نزلت رحت هربت، بقوا يطخطخوا على الباص، انطبش الكزاز، فاتت الرصاصة من الكزاز أجت.
Violence has surged across the West Bank since October the 7th. Over 400 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces and Jewish settlers. 1/4 of them aged between 10 and 17, according to the UN. 15 Israelis have been killed by Palestinians. Bourchier has long been a flashpoint, overlooked by Jewish settlements whose residents have been filmed attacking villagers, destroying their property. In Bourchier, villagers say the army sides with the settlers and fails to protect them, creating what Amr Najjar's mother says is a living nightmare.
خوفا من انه يقتلوا اولادي، بروح بلاقيهم من المدرسه عشان ما يقتلوش اولادي، كم شوفوا وين ربنا كتب انه ابني انقتل في البلد. شفت قديش انا حاولت اخبي ابني راح مني.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Human rights groups in Israel and the West Bank accuse the army of disregard for Palestinian lives, including children. The Israel Defense Force rejects this. They told us they'd faced a surge in terrorist attacks since October the 7th. That they do not target non-combatants, including children. And that live fire was only used after all other options had been utilised.
The last report in 2023.
This human rights lawyer says soldiers will not be held accountable by Israel and should be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court.
There is no accountability. Nobody will hold them accountable. They are protected even. So I believe that if there is an international accountability system in force, I'm sure they will change their mind. I'm not sure that all of them they will stop, but at least I know that there will be something different than now.
The family of Amr Najjar do not expect justice. And while the Israeli military says it's investigating the circumstances of his death, there's a hunger to fight back.
احتلونا وقتلونا واغتصبوا أرضنا، نعمل سلام، فيش سلام نهائيا، ما بنفكرش في شيء اسمه سلام.
They're angry and they're afraid. A generation trapped.
Our reporters found rental affordability across Australia has hit a 17-year low. According to real estate data firm PropTrack, households earning a median income can only afford 39% of rental properties advertised online, and almost no properties are considered affordable for households earning around $50,000.
Before the pandemic, we had quite an extended period of slower rental growth. Actually, rental affordability improved quite markedly over the 15 or 20 years before the pandemic. And so really what's happened is we've had a shift in demand, how households use homes. People want more space now. That's put a lot of pressure on the housing stock. And it points to really the long-term solution out of this housing crisis is building more homes. But in the short term, I mean, particularly low-income renters need more support. particularly in inner city areas, we saw throughout the pandemic rents fall quite markedly, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. And we've seen rents rebound quite fast over the past couple of years. In regional areas, we saw a bigger than normal push of migration towards regional areas, and that's put a huge amount of pressure on rental markets there. So regional parts of Australia have seen tight rental conditions now for 4 years straight, really low rental availability, really fast rent growth. And that really has changed the rental market, and the supply of homes hasn't kept up. There's been a number of challenges for building homes, getting trades. The cost of materials has increased quite markedly since the pandemic.
As the housing crisis puts more pressure on renters across the country, South Australian animal rescuers are also facing a growing problem. Crisis charities say a lack of pet-friendly private rentals is forcing people to surrender animals out of desperation.
Hello. This is the moment Kerry was reunited with her 3 dogs after more than 13 months of homelessness and 5 years without stable housing. They've been in foster care, and at her lowest point, she'd even tried to surrender the trio.
I just said, I'm going to have to give the dogs up because we're not going to get a house with them.
Fortunately, she has finally secured a house where she can live with Zuka, Sheba and Jasper. But as Adelaide vacancy rates drop below 1%, while rents skyrocket, there's a dwindling number of pet-friendly dwellings available, putting animal rescue organisations on the front line of the housing crisis. The Animal Welfare League's 2 Adelaide shelters are above capacity.
We've seen roughly a 32% increase of people needing to rehome their dogs year on year. So overwhelmingly, people are telling us that the housing crisis is causing this.
At the same time, adoption rates are falling while people aren't recovering their strays.
Typically, people will come and reclaim them, but we've seen a 9% decrease.
Crisis charity Safe Pets Safe Families provides foster care for dogs, but it's also been overwhelmed.
It's heartbreaking, especially when you do get a phone call and it's going to make me cry. A phone call of when that their pet is everything to them.
Kerry was one of the lucky owners, but experts say without more social housing, it's a problem that won't go away. Alana Calvert, ABC News.
The Ballarat community has come together to pay tribute to Victorian woman Samantha Murphy after 22-year-old Patrick Stevenson was charged with her murder. Reporter Cyan Valance was in Ballarat for the event.
Hundreds of locals have gathered here together as one to honour the memory of much-loved local mum, Samantha Murphy. As the sun set, they lit up their phones in tribute. Ballarat is a small, tight-knit community. For the first time since police laid charges over Samantha Murphy's alleged murder, they've come together in grief.
Everybody just had hope. They had hope that Sam would come home. No one dared to think that she wasn't coming home. And I think after having weeks and weeks of hope, I think we're all feeling very shattered at the moment.
Hundreds lined up to sign a condolence book for Samantha's loved ones. Some brought flowers, others gathered to grieve in solidarity. Many of them didn't even know Samantha, but they've been deeply impacted.
This has been an emotional journey for our community. And it's been a journey that I think has really brought our community together. It's been something that has touched the lives of people both further afield, interstate and internationally.
And it's not just here in Ballarat. Women around the country are completing 14 kilometres for Samantha, finishing the run she never got home from. There will also be a memorial run this weekend as locals look for ways to remember and pay tribute.
Cyan Valance reporting from Ballarat. Concerns have been raised for attendees at a music festival in Victoria's West after heatwave warnings were issued for the state. Organisers of the Pitch Music and Arts Festival near Moyston, east of Ballarat, have told festival goers to delay their arrival until further notice. A total fire ban is in effect for much of Victoria this long weekend, with temperatures expected to hit the low 40s in some areas. South Australia and Tasmania are also in for some very hot weather this weekend. Senior Bureau Meteorologist Sarah Scully says a high pressure system is behind the high temperatures.
The temperatures are forecast to be high right across southern parts of South Australia, southern New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania as well. There's heatwave warnings and also fire weather warnings with fire bans as well. And it's the maximum temperatures we're forecasting to be in the mid to high 30s and even pushing into the low 40s as we go inland. But it's the overnight temperatures that we're also forecasting to be really high. This morning or overnight last night, Adelaideans had a really hot night where it hovered around 30 degrees for the majority of the night, and it's going to be another oppressive night tonight as well, and the hot weather continuing for the remainder of the long weekend.
There's concern in the beauty and dentistry industries over a crackdown on cosmetic procedures, with everything from Botox injections to dental veneers under the spotlight. Authorities say stronger safeguards are needed to protect the high number of young and potentially vulnerable people who undergo these procedures.
Very good. I'm going to get you popping these glasses.
Jayden Velarde hasn't looked back since achieving his dream of getting porcelain veneers.
The main issue that I had with my teeth personally, and not everyone will agree with me, is they were gappy. So there was gaps in between them, and they weren't really proportionate to one another. They were all different shapes and sizes.
Veneers are effectively thin shells bonded to teeth. The 25-year-old FIFO worker went from this to this.
I've wanted a nice smile since I was 15. It was $21,000 for absolutely everything start to finish, which in my opinion is absolutely priceless.
Jayden says he made a fully informed decision to go ahead with the procedure, but authorities say not all young people are being made aware of the risks and ongoing costs.
People may not have really understood that when they're having veneers done, say, for example, the upper front teeth, being burred back to create space for the veneers, that this is a lifelong project that they've undertaken and would require lifelong maintenance as they go forward.
They're planning stronger safeguards across the non-surgical cosmetic sector, everything from veneers to Botox and fillers. Included in the changes, practitioners would have to avoid advertising that glamorises cosmetic procedures, avoid misleading before and after photos, and assess patients for psychological conditions. This dentist is on board with the bulk of the proposals.
I think before and after pics, if they are unedited and they are actually realistic, I think that's actually important. But as you know, there is a lot of photos that could be photoshopped. There's a lot of AI that could be done on photos, and they don't really represent the treatment that's actually been completed.
1, 2, 3, little sting. The beauty industry agrees stronger rules are needed, but it's warned against the over-regulation of advertising.
In this day and age, people do their research online, and they shouldn't have that freedom of information and freedom of choice removed from them. You know, knowledge is power.
The changes are being mainly welcomed by cosmetic surgeons who sometimes have to deal with complications from injectable treatments. The beauty industry has underlined the need for more education.
We would rather see a shift towards education, excellence and the elevation of standards rather than excessively harsh consequences for nurses and practitioners.
For Jayden, his new smile involves an ongoing financial commitment. His veneers will need to be replaced in 10 to 15 years' time, but it's a cost he's prepared to pay.
You have a really good night and you look at the photos the next day and you might not want to post it to social media because you don't like your smile. So I feel a lot more confident just laughing and smiling and being more engaged in conversations.
Over 100 submissions to the plans are being reviewed before any changes are enforced. Major surgery for a booming industry. Claire Moody, ABC News.
Security forces in northwest Nigeria are searching for almost 300 young students who were kidnapped from a school in Kaduna State. One teacher who managed to escape says locals attempted to rescue the children, but gunmen arrived on motorbikes and attacked them. A 14-year-old boy was shot and died of his injuries. It's the second mass kidnapping in northern Nigeria in less than a week. Those kidnapped are usually freed after a ransom is paid.
One of the most important responsibilities of the government is to ensure that we protect the lives and properties of our citizens. By the grace of God, under my able leadership, we will try as much as possible to ensure that every child returns.
The UN Security Council has adopted a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Sudan to coincide with the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. 14 countries backed the British resolution, with only Russia abstaining. Aid groups say around 25 million people in Sudan are in desperate need of food. Britain's Deputy Representative to the UN, James Karini, says there must be a ceasefire to allow civilians to get help.
The Council has sent a strong and clear message to the Sudanese Armed Forces and Rapid Support Forces to agree an immediate cessation of hostilities during the month of Ramadan. We urge the Sudanese Armed Forces and Rapid Support Forces to act on this united international call for peace.
A United Nations fact-finding mission has concluded that Iran was responsible for the violence that led to the death in custody of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old Kurdish woman was accused of breaching the country's hijab laws. A report submitted to the UN's Human Rights Council says the government also used unnecessary lethal force to suppress a wave of demonstrations that followed Amini's death. Tens of thousands gathered in competing marches in Madrid on International Women's Day, reflecting diverging ideologies within the feminist movement in the Spanish capital. Around 30,000 people attended the march organised by Madrid's M8 Commission feminist movement, protesting against gender inequality, while elsewhere 4,000 marched, opposing the larger gathering, protesting against gender self-identification. It's the third straight year opposing marches have taken place in Spain. The Duchess of Sussex helped kick off the 2024 South by Southwest conference today in Austin, speaking on a panel marking International Women's Day. As part of the keynote panel, Breaking Barriers, Shaping Narratives, Meghan Markle spoke about the representation of women and mothers in the media. The panel also discussed the negative effects social media is having on women and girls, sharing her experience of online abuse when pregnant with her 2 children, and called for change.
Digital space and in certain sectors of the media, we have forgotten about our humanity. And that has got to change, because I understand there's a bottom line, and I understand that a lot of money is being made there. But even if it's making dollars, it doesn't make sense.
A Pentagon report into unidentified flying objects has found no evidence aliens have visited Earth or crash-landed here. The inquiry looked into US government investigations of UFO sightings since the end of the Second World War. It found most were ordinary objects and phenomenon that had been misidentified. A Pentagon spokesperson says the investigators looked into all past claims and were granted access at the highest levels.
None of the agencies that they spoke with prevented them from getting any of the information that they needed to do. We understand that this is something that is, of great interest to a significant number of people and organizations, and so they took this very seriously. They followed the evidence wherever it led them, and I think the results speak for itself.
Here's Jared Coote with the latest in sport.
Carlton has come from behind to beat Brisbane by 1 point in an AFL opening round thriller at the Gabba. The Blues trailed by 46 points in the second quarter, but kicked 7 goals to 1 in the third term and held on in a seesaw-ring final quarter to win 13 goals 8-86 to 12-13 85. Charlie Curnow kicked 4 goals for Carlton, and teammate Harry Mackay finished with 3. The loss ends Brisbane's 14-game win streak at its home ground. Melbourne Storm has maintained its perfect round 1 record under coach Craig Bellamy with a low-scoring win over Penrith in Melbourne. Remus Smith managed the only try of the night as the Storm held off the reigning premiers 8-0, meaning Melbourne still hasn't lost in the first round of the competition since 2001. Elsewhere, the New Zealand Warriors raced out to a 12-0 lead at home to Cronulla before eventually being run down 16 points to 12.
I really don't do it, actually. I'm sitting up in the box, so the players have done it now. It's a nice record to have it, I suppose, but, we just sort of pride ourselves on what we do in the pre-season, and hopefully, we can have a good start to the season.
Three-time defending world champion Max Verstappen has pole position for tomorrow morning's Saudi Arabian Formula One Grand Prix. The Red Bull driver will start ahead of Ferrari's Charles Leclerc in second and teammate Sergio Perez in third. 18-year-old Oliver Behrman will start his Ferrari in 11th after being called up to replace Carlos Sainz, who has appendicitis. Australia's Oscar Piastri is fifth on the grid for McLaren, and Daniel Ricciardo is 14th. The Wildcats have beaten the Tasmania Jack Jumpers in Game 1 of their best-of-3 NBL semi-final series in Perth last night. The Wildcats won 89 points to 81 in the end. Keanu Pinder top-scored for Perth with 25 points, while Jordan Crawford finished with 19 points for the Jack Jumpers. Game 2 of that series is in Hobart on Monday. The Highlanders have been the New South Wales Waratahs in a thrilling finish to their Super Rugby Pacific clash in Sydney, winning 23 points to 21. Tane Edmund had a chance to win the game for the home side after the siren, but his 39-metre penalty goal went just to the left-hand side of the post, preventing a Waratahs victory. Elsewhere, the Melbourne Rebels have recorded back-to-back wins with a 29-23 victory over Moana Pacifica in the New Zealand city of Hamilton. Glenn Vaihu scored a game-sealing try with just 2 minutes remaining. In bottom place, Western United has made it back-to-back wins in the A-League men's competition after downing Western Sydney 3-1. The Wanderers opened the scoring at home before the visitors scored 3 goals in 12 minutes to make it 3 wins in their last 5 games, and their first going back-to-back all season. The Wellington Phoenix, meantime, has won its first match in Australia in more than 4 months in the A-League women's competition, beating Perth Glory 3-1. Macy Fraser sealed the win with a goal in the 78th minute.
Looking around the country, warm temperatures across Queensland with some showers in the state's east, mostly sunny in the southwest and mostly cloudy in the northwest. To New South Wales and the ACT, fog then sunny in the southeast, showers in the northeast, sunny conditions in the west. There'll be hot temperatures across Victoria with some fog in the southeast, mostly sunny elsewhere. In Tasmania, hot in the south, warm in the north with some rain, increasing sunshine in the southeast. South Australia will be hot statewide with sunny conditions in the southeast and west of the state, mostly sunny elsewhere. Mild temperatures in Western Australia's south with sunny conditions in the southwest. Showers and storms with warm temperatures across the northwest of the country, with a possible shower over the territory's interior, mostly cloudy in the south. Looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capital cities, possible showers in Brisbane. Sydney will be mostly sunny, fog then sunny in Canberra, mostly sunny in Melbourne and Adelaide. Hobart will have a late shower, a sunny day for Perth and possible thunderstorms for Darwin with a top of 32. And that's the latest from ABC News. I'm Dan Bourchier. Thanks for your company. Great to have you along.